Hello everyone, my name is Hailey Elizabeth, and if you don't know who I am, I post videos pertaining to a little bit of whatever I want: conspiracy theories, controversial people, true crime, vlogs. So if you're interested in any of that, you can subscribe, and if not, totally chill. And for today's case, we're going to be talking about the case of Domina Cherry. Now there is a lot to get through, so we're just going to hop right into it. Domina Cherry, aka Sarah M, was born in 2002, which I thought was so crazy to me because I was born in 2002, and I don't know why, but usually whenever we talk about killers, they're always like in their 30s or 40s, or like they started in their 20s and got caught in their 30s. But Sarah was only 19 when all this happened. Sarah was born in Switzerland to her parents as an only child. As she grew up into a toddler, she actually moved to Bavaria, Germany, more specifically Forchheim, which had a population of around 32,000 people. As far as Sarah's childhood, Sarah had a pretty normal childhood. She had lots of friends. She did good in school. Sarah even owned a pet rabbit that was like her best friend. She would take her pet rabbit everywhere. She had loving and attentive parents. She had a great relationship with her parents. And overall, she was just a very normal, active child. But when Sarah was a teenager, that's when everything would sort of go downhill. She became very rebellious, very angsty. When she was 15, she started smoking weed, and when she would smoke weed, she would frequently skip school, and since she was skipping school, she was having terrible grades. And Sarah, as a teenager, actually enjoyed annoying her parents. Like, sometimes she would go out of her way to do things, like she wouldn't answer their calls, she would have parties at the house, just things to make her parents mad, because she kind of liked that attention from them. And Sarah even started to have a lot of problems with the kids at school. She would be constantly getting into fights with everyone, just over like simple things or big things, or just overall things that didn't really matter. It just seemed like Sarah was obsessed with the drama of it and really enjoyed getting into fights with people. She would not obey by the school's dress code. She would wear heavy makeup and dye her hair. And around this time is when she also started to listen to a lot of heavy metal music and really started to get into that heavy metal culture. And she also started a rumor about herself where she went around telling everyone that she was a prostitute, and that's how she got a lot of money to get all of the nice clothes that she wore. I mean, it's not that outrageous because unfortunately it does happen to some girls, but if she was a prostitute at 15, that's not really something you go around and tell people. She was out bragging about it and talking about it as much as she could, and that's not typically something that you would want to be bragging about. That's something that you would want to like just keep to yourself, especially because that's insanely illegal. And then in 2018, at the age of 16, that's when she started to experiment a little bit more into drugs. And so, as I said, she has done weed before, but during this time, she started to get really hooked onto ecstasy and Molly. She was even arrested for possession of drugs at 16, and when she was being arrested, it was said that she was extremely violent with the police. She was calling them names, she was kicking them, she was screaming, just basically like throwing a tantrum. But unfortunately, after getting involved with the law and drugs, that is when Sarah began self-harming, and a lot of kids at her high school would see her with cuts on her wrists. She even had a YouTube channel at the time where she would go on her YouTube channel to confess about all of her struggles, and even said in one of her videos, quote, "I have depression and I do indeed harm myself. I don't recommend you doing it, by the way. Now, I know you ask yourself, why do you do it? And why shouldn't we? Honestly, I can't help myself. It calms me down and it's like an addiction." And unfortunately, one day when Sarah's mother was putting away Sarah's clothes, she opened up her closet, and that is when she would find a rope that was tied to the top banister of her closet. When the mother saw this, she was shocked, she was scared. And so that is when Sarah's mother immediately checked Sarah into a psychiatric facility, to which she stayed for an extended stay. While she was staying at the psychiatric facility, she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, as well as suffering hallucinogens from all of the psychedelics that she was taking at such a young age. And the doctors even said that she had, quote, emotional disturbance. But just because Sarah was getting treatment doesn't mean that she was getting better. As I said, Sarah loved when all eyes were on her, and she loved the feeling of getting in trouble. So while she was in this psychiatric facility, she ended up befriending one of the patients there, to which she tried to convince that patient to off themselves. Now, luckily, the patient didn't do anything to themselves, but they did go to one of like the doctors about it. But Sarah was taken out of that like wing and put into a different place, and this is when she got extended stay because the doctors felt that she had destructive tendencies. And then in 2019, at the age of 17, that is when she was released from the hospital. She has all this alone time in her room, and that is when she started to pick up an interest in serial killers. But not just, enjoying true crime, it was more romanticizing serial killers. This is surprisingly something that I see a lot with these cases. There are a lot of people out there who tend to romanticize serial killers. I mostly see it on Twitter. Like, there's entire subgroups of people who literally like make edits of their favorite serial killers, or they talk about how gorgeous they are. They talk about like little cute facts about them. And I've even seen some posts on Twitter of people fantasizing what it would be like to be murdered by these serial killers. An example of this is if you guys have ever seen my video about Isabella Guzman. Isabella Guzman had murdered both of her parents, but her footage from the trial actually went viral on TikTok because Isabella was pretty. She is attractive, and so a lot of people basically just dismissed the fact that she murdered both of her parents. Oh, don't blame her, like she didn't do anything wrong. And people would even make edits of her, like sexual edits of her, romanticizing. And that's exactly what Sarah did. She romanticized a lot of serial killers. She even had Ted Bundy and Richard Ramirez posters all over her room. Her favorite serial killer was Richard Ramirez, and even had him as her home screen. She actually had Ted Bundy on her lock screen and Richard Ramirez as her home screen. She would also take to her Instagram to talk about how much she loved serial killers and how much she admired them, and one of her favorite serial killers was Jack the Ripper. She would even frequently draw pentagrams on her palm, very similar to what Richard Ramirez did at his trial. She would also draw swastikas all over her arm. Now, as I said, she lives in Germany, and in Germany, drawing that is extremely illegal. It can actually land you in jail for 3 years, but as I said, Sarah enjoys getting in trouble. Sarah was never caught with any of this on her arm, and nothing happened to her. And so as her obsession with serial killers started to grow, she started to sort of fantasize not about the serial killers, but what it would be like to be a serial killer. But not just any random serial killer. She wanted to be a famous one. And so around this age at 17 is when she started to kind of play with the idea of what it would be like to kill someone and get away with it. Also at the age of 17, that is when she would get her first boyfriend named Leon. Leon is very similar to Sarah in that he struggles a lot with his mental health. He was also very into drugs and had a very lengthy criminal record. But Sarah and Leon, since this was Sarah's like very first boyfriend, she actually lost her virginity to Leon. The two of them were in love, and usually the person that you like lose that to, you tend to like have a very intense feeling of love for them because you guys share an intimate bond that you can't share with anyone else. And that's exactly what happened with Sarah and Leon. They were absolutely in love with each other. They would spend every second of every day with each other. But this is unfortunately where Sarah would later become obsessed with having sex. And she mostly loved sex because, as I said, she enjoyed attention. And when she was doing that, she was being praised and called hot, and it would basically like boost her ego. But as time went on, Sarah would try to make the sex a little bit more extreme, to the point where she would ask ask Leon to choke her and beat her, which, by the way, I do not care what anyone does behind closed doors. As long as it's two consenting adults, then like who really cares? There is a line that can be crossed when one of the parties is in long-lasting pain, or it can lead to bigger medical issues. That is kind of when it becomes too much and it's not really fun anymore. And that is exactly what happened to Sarah. She would force Leon to hit her harder and harder until she would have scratches, bruises, and like open wounds all over her body, to the point where like those open wounds would get infected, and those infections can lead to bigger things. And so in March of 2021, the couple had been dating at this point for 2 years, and Sarah just continued to want more and more from Leon. And Leon started to feel extremely uncomfortable because when he saw Sarah the next day in like extreme pain and with all of these marks all over her body, he felt bad because he didn't want to hurt her, or he didn't want to see her in long-lasting pain because he loved Sarah. So after a while, it went from fun to just very uncomfortable. It was way too violent for him. The things that she was asking him to do was just something he was not comfortable with anymore. So after 2 years, Leon broke up with Sarah. And when this happened, Sarah was completely destroyed. She did not know what to do with her life. She was mad, she was sad, but it was also said that this breakup would be the catalyst for what is about to come. Over time, her sadness would later turn into anger, and her anger would turn into revenge. As revenge for Leon, she started to spread all of these rumors about Leon, saying that Leon had choked her, had abused her, had SA'd her, and even took nude photos of her and posted it online. After the fact, the police had talked to Leon, looked through all of his things. They couldn't find any nude photos. They couldn't find any nude photos online. So since this portion wasn't really true, the credibility of the SA, the abuse, the choking is also very 50-50. And that is when she decided that she wanted to murder Leon. Not just Leon. She wanted to also murder hundreds of other men that were just like Leon. In April of 2021, 1 week after the breakup, that is when Sarah started to put her murderous plans into action. She went to the store with a friend and bought a 12-inch camping knife, and she actually wasn't even old enough to buy this camping knife. She brought a friend who was over 18, and that friend bought the knife for her. She just told that friend like, oh, I need this knife for camping, and her friend didn't really think much of it. He was like, oh, okay, I'll do that for you. And I just think it's wild that Sarah's weapon of choice was a knife, because stabbing someone out of all of the ways to murder someone is one of the most intimate ways of killing someone. If you shoot someone, you're from a far range, you can't really see them die, and like you could close your eyes if you wanted to. But when you are stabbing someone, you have to be close to them in order to hurt them, and you have to watch them die in front of you. And so the fact that Sarah preferred that way over like shooting someone is just so dark and twisted. It kind of seemed like Sarah planned on enjoying all of these murders. Sarah even started Googling on her laptop, just like her open public browser. She started Googling things like, quote, how long does it take someone to die if you stab them in the neck? And quote, how long does it take to die if you stab someone in the lung? And quote, what is the best way to become a serial killer? She literally looked that up. And then after this, she started to Google more about serial killers, but not just like fun facts about serial killers. She started to Google about the tactics that serial killers use, and basically just wrote down and gained a bunch of knowledge on how to successfully get away with the crime. But as I said earlier, Sarah didn't just want to be an average killer. She wanted to be a serial killer, and she she wanted her name to be famous. She wanted to be a murderer that would have the most amount of victims. And so that is when Sarah would look up the murderer with the most amount of victims, and that is when the name Harold Shipman came up. And if you guys don't know who Harold Shipman is, he was the serial killer doctor who ended up killing around 218 confirmed patients, but it is speculated that that number goes up to 250. After she reads this, she immediately texts her friend and says, quote, "The biggest serial killer has committed around 250 murders. I am going to do more than that." Hello everyone, don't worry, it's still me, just thanking the sponsor of today's episode, Stamps.com. Now, if you guys have your own business or you work for a business, you know that the holidays are a nightmare. It is the busiest time of year, and sometimes if you're a new business, it's hard to prepare for the seasonal rush, and sometimes it can even just take you by surprise. The holiday rush means more mailing and shipping for your business, but it doesn't have to mean more stress. Stamps.com has been helping businesses like yours save time and money for 25 years, and it can help you get ready for the holiday ramp up. All you need is Stamps.com's premium rates for all your postage needs. With Stamps.com, all you need is a computer and a printer. They even send you a free scale, so you'll have everything you need to get started. Now, taking care of orders on the go is even easier with Stamps.com mobile app. If you need a package pickup, you can easily schedule it through the Stamps.com dashboard, and if you sell your products online, Stamps.com seamlessly connects with every major marketplace and shopping cart. And they also give premium discounts on supplies at your fingertips. Order shipping and mailing supplies, labels, and even printers from the supply store. Get huge carrier discounts up to 84% off USPS and UPS rates. Plus, Stamps.com automatically tells you the cheapest and fastest shipping options. For 25 years, Stamps.com has been indispensable for over 1 million businesses. Get access to the USPS and UPS services you need right now from your computer anytime, day or night, no lines, no traffic, no waiting. Get your business ready for the holiday rush. Get started with Stamps.com today. Sign up with promo code BEHIND for a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. Just go to Stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the page, and enter code BEHIND. Again, thank you so much for Stamps.com for sponsoring today's episode. Now back to your episode. So how exactly was Sarah going to rack up 250 victims? Well, that is when she decided that she was going to lure men through dating apps. She would make multiple dating profiles on apps such as Badoo, Plenty of Fish, Tinder, and some sugar daddy apps in order to lure men in. Sarah has made herself a murderer very, very obvious. She has literally texted her friend and told her that she was going to be a murderer, openly Googling all of these questions on how to become a murderer. And if those things weren't obvious enough, when she was making the dating profiles, she used her own photos. So her face was just like front and center on all of these dating apps, but she didn't use the name Sarah. She actually went by the name Domina Cherry, which in German, Domina means like female dominatrix. Her bio on these dating apps read, quote, "A bisexual 19-year-old virgin who's looking for a good time that also has a strong interest in BDSM." I guess she's sort of setting it up that she's like this innocent teenager who's a virgin but also has a curiosity in BDSM. And so with that bio alone, you can already tell the type of people that she was luring in. Very creepy old men. And so for the next 3 days, Sarah would spend her days chatting with these men online, trying to figure out who her first victim would be. First guy she talked to was a guy named Sam, to which he opened up the conversation by saying, quote, "Would you like to meet up? If so, where?" And Sarah responded, quote, "Sounds good." He responded with the licking lips emoji and, quote, "Do you have experience with older men?" And Sarah said, quote, yes, I've had experiences with 28-year-olds. She also made it very known that nothing was off the table for her, that she was into everything. And she also went on in the conversation to say how she loves to be in control when it comes to the bedroom, which entirely just contradicts her story, because how could you have not ever had sex before but know exactly what you want in sex? Also, I thought it was kind of crazy how he said, do you have experience with older men? And she said, yes, I've had experience with 28-year-olds, as if 28 is old. I feel like that little bitch just basically tells you how young Sarah was when she was doing all of this. Like, in her mind, a 28-year-old was like an older man to her. And so then after this, Sam asks Sarah if she's 18, and she says, yes, I am over 18. And then that's when the two of them plan to meet up on May 3rd. Sarah was also talking to another man by the name of Murad, and Murad was a little bit more blunt than Sam. He actually opened up the conversation by saying, quote, hey, hope everything is fine with you. When are we meeting, babe? And she responded saying, quote, anytime after May 3rd, because May 3rd was her date with Sam. Murad responded, quote, sex in the car then? And Sarah responded with, quote, whatever you want. We can also drive to my cabin. It's really nice and it's in the middle of the forest. It even has heating and an oven, so we won't be disturbed. So that's when Murad actually reveals that he's a teacher and says, quote, yes, whatever. I'm into some unusual sexual practices. Is this okay with you? Sarah says, quote, yes, I prefer blindfold and handcuffs. Make sure to bring this with you. And there was actually a third man that she was talking to named Anthony. Now, Anthony, I'm not going to read the conversations for that because it's a little crazy. He is basically asking Sarah if he could be Sarah's slave and she would be like his dominatrix and like tell him what to do. But she actually does agree to meet up with Anthony on May 5th. Over the course of the first 3 days that she had put out her dating profiles, she had been contacted by 224 men. As I said, Sarah had a goal of hitting like over 250. And so it seemed like it was going to be very easy for Sarah to get there. Sarah actually planned on going on a killing spree and even told her friend that she was going to go on a date with these men one by one and slit their throats. Now, I'm not really sure what the friends' reactions to all of this was. I'm not sure if they thought that it was like a dark joke or something. Then on the 4th day, that is when Sarah receives a message from a man named Zayed, and that's when she decides that Zayed is going to be her first victim. Zayed is of Iranian descent, and there's not much that we know about him because of Germany's very strict privacy laws, but what we do know about him is that he is 39 years old and moved to Germany from Iraq at the age of 32, so at this point he had been living in Germany for around 7 years. He is one of 6 brothers, although both of his parents had unfortunately passed away. After his parents passed away, he came to Germany for a new life and to just start over. He worked as a private security guard for a living, and he loved football. That was one of his favorite sports. He loved watching it and even played it in his free time. And Zayed had high hopes for himself. He had a long future for himself. Zayed was, 39. He wanted to settle down. He wanted to have kids. He wanted to get married. And so he wasn't really looking for a hookup or anything like that. He was more looking for like a long-term girlfriend. And then on May 1st of 2021, Zayed would message Sarah saying, quote, hello, good morning at 10:53 a.m. And Sarah responded with, quote, what are you looking for here on Badoo? And Zayed responds with, quote, well, I'm a single man looking for anything really. Sarah says, quote, wanna meet up, with the kissy face emoji, and Zayed responds, quote, well, of course. And then he asks, quote, are you the devil's bride? To which she responds with, quote, yes, the devil's bride himself. That's when Sarah asks Zayed if he has a car because there's no train station in her town, and Zayed said yes, that he did have a car. So they actually made plans to meet that night at 8 p.m. He was going to pick up Sarah from a local bus stop. And the plan is that from there, like at the bus stop, he was going to pick her up, and then from there they were going to drive out to Sarah's remote cabin in the woods. While she's waiting for Zayed to show up, she starts Googling more things such as, quote, how to hide a body, and quote, how long does it take for someone to bleed out? While she's like trying to plan out this murder that she is going to commit tonight, Leon actually shows up at the house because he's there to collect a few of his things. And Sarah said afterwards that when Leon showed up, it took every fiber in her being not to take out the knife and just start stabbing him and murder him right there, but she held herself back and she didn't do anything because she wanted Leon's murder to be a lot more special. And Leon was actually terrified that Sarah would do something like this because Leon had his friend drive him to Sarah's house and told his friend that if he starts tugging on the curtains by the window to immediately come inside, or if he wasn't out within 10 minutes to just go inside and storm the house. But nothing happens. Leon gets his stuff, he leaves, and then at 7:30 p.m. is when Zaya texted Sarah saying that he was on the way. After this, that's when Sarah tries to call her friend Francisca, but she didn't answer, so she ends up leaving a voicemail that says, quote, I'm going out now. I'm going to kill my first. I'm excited. It's pouring rain out. Please wish me luck. It works. And then after the voicemail, she actually sent a text to Francisca saying, quote, going to go all natural born killer now. Wish me luck. And then sends a video of her dancing around her room with the knife in her waistband. And so when Francisca saw this, she saw the video and she immediately started to panic because she was actually thinking about committing a murder. And so it's known that Francisca was probably panicking after this because after she received the text, she Googled, quote, are you punished if you know about an attempted murder? Which, for those who don't know, that is illegal. If a crime is about to happen or you are aware of a crime that is about to happen and you don't come forward to the police, you are technically a witness to that crime and that is punishable. And who really knows, but if Francisca went to the police when she received that text message, but it could have had a lot different of an outcome. Sarah shows up at the bus stop and she starts Googling things such as, quote, places to put a person who's bleeding out, and quote, what happens if you stab someone in the neck? At this time, Francisca texts Sarah and says, quote, how do you plan on doing this without getting caught? And Sarah responded with a voice memo saying, quote, the plan is for me to say, hey, I have a surprise for you. Close your eyes. Then I'm going to stab him. And then at the end of it, she starts imitating gurgling and stabbing sounds, all while laughing. So then at 8:20 p.m., that is when Zayed arrives at the bus stop and picks up Sarah, and they drive off to this remote cabin. And the whole entire time, Sarah is talking to Zayed. She's trying to flirt with him, make him more comfortable. And then at 8:30 p.m., that's when Sarah directs Zayed to turn down a deserted road. They start driving down this road, and that's when Sarah asks Zayed to pull over, to which he does, and the both of them get out, and Sarah gives her phone to Zayed and says, hey, look at this on my phone. And while Zayed is distracted, that's when Sarah pulls out the knife and stabs Zayed in the neck. The knife had actually hit his jugular vein and he screamed out. He immediately started to fight back and he tried to take the knife out of Sarah's hands, and this kind of threw Sarah off a little bit because she wasn't expecting Zayed to fight back. She thought that she was just going to stab him, he was going to fall to the ground, and that was it. But Zayed is a private security guard while Sarah is a very small and petite girl. But Sarah is able to break away and run away as far as she can, while Zayed is able to apply enough pressure to his wound to get the bleeding to stop, and then he stumbles to a main road where he flags down a car. This car pulls over and there's two people inside, and ironically, one of the people in the car was actually a nurse, so they started to treat on Zayed's wound immediately and called an ambulance. So back to Sarah. Sarah had fled the scene, and at this point she had ran so far that she ran into a nearby town by the name of Ibanmanstadt Bahnhof. I think that's how you pronounce it, but that town's central station. And while she was walking around in town, people started staring at her because Sarah had no shoes, her tights were ripped, she was covered in blood and mud, and she even was walking around mumbling underneath her breath, quote, I'm a murderer. I am an effing killer. So someone sees this and they call the police immediately, and 37 minutes after the attack, Sarah was put into police custody. And when Sarah was found, the police had no clue what Sarah had just done. They thought that maybe she had gotten lost or maybe something had happened to her. So that's when Sarah tells the police that she killed someone, and the police ask her, well, did you kill them out of self-defense? And Sarah just responds with, quote, no, I wanted to cut someone up and watch them die. And so the police immediately take her down to the station for questioning, and when they're trying to figure out what happened, that's when Sarah says, quote, I've just tried to kill someone. You know, it would be such a waste if I went to jail only for attempted murder. I had planned so much more. And when asked again if this murder was out of self-defense, she responds with, no, I wanted to slash his throat. I wanted to watch him die. Sarah then reveals to the police that she had murdered a man by the name of Zayed, and Sarah is arrested. Back at the hospital, the doctors are trying to work on Zayed and trying to keep him alive, but unfortunately, after days of operating, he unfortunately slipped into a coma. He was in this coma for 19 days, and all of Zayed's family came out. Even his extended family in Iraq had come out and said their goodbyes to Zayed, and after 19 days in a coma, Zayed unfortunately passed away. So once Zayed had passed away, that's when Sarah's charges were upped from attempted murder to murder. But Sarah showed absolutely no remorse for the murder. She bragged about it as much as she could, and she even went around telling people that it was sad that she got caught so early because she had so many more exciting ideas. And while in prison, Sarah got lots of attention because she was actually in a unisex prison, so she was only one of 3 women in that entire prison, and she got tons of male attention. They viewed her as a hero. They would all cheer for her when she entered the room, and so obviously this boosted Sarah's ego even more. She felt like murdering someone was a good thing, and she deserved all the praise for it, and so she even called her mom and asked her mom if she could put money in her commissary account so she'd be able to buy clothes and be the best dressed in prison, because there are some prisons in Germany that just allow you to wear your regular civilian clothes, and you can even buy regular civilian clothes, and so Sarah was at a prison like that. But out of all of the things that Sarah could have worn, Sarah decided to wear a bright orange jumpsuit that all of her favorite American serial killers had worn, like Richard Ramirez, Jeffrey Dahmer. She basically chose to strip her own self of her own identity, and she even asked the guards if she could put up posters of Ted Bundy, to which obviously they said no. Her mom even visited her in prison, and she had asked her mom if her mom could go out and murder Leon because he was the next on her list, but she never got an opportunity to. Obviously, the mom said no, and after this, she started to make her visits to Sarah a little bit more sparse. Then in May of 2022, that's when Sarah's trial was, and even at the trial, she showed no remorse, no guilt. It seemed as if she sort of loved all of this attention. She wore a leather jacket, she smoked cigarettes, she dyed her hair dark red, she wore heavy eye makeup, and Zayed's family had showed up for the entire trial. And even when Zayed's family went up there and they cried and they said how much they miss Zayed and how much Zayed meant to them, Sarah continued to show no remorse, no guilt, no apology, no respect. But when Sarah went up there to tell her story, she did not deny anything, and she didn't spare any details. She was very open and told the court that she planned on killing over 250 men. She went on to talk about all of the men that she had conversations with and how her intention was to murder all of them. But she said that although she wanted to murder all of these men, the one man that is to blame for all of this is her ex-boyfriend Leon. Leon. She says that Leon is the reason why she wanted to go on a murderous spree. She said that throughout her and Leon's relationship, he would frequently abuse her and at one point even try to murder her. And so obviously these are really heavy claims. So they bring in Leon to testify. And I'm assuming Sarah didn't really expect Leon to be there, because as soon as she sees him, she starts jumping up out of her chair. She's trying to attack him, I think, because the guards are like holding her back. And the whole time Leon is on the stand, she's just bawling her eyes out. Leon, of course, denied all accusations that Sarah had claimed about him. He said that he was familiar that Sarah was obsessed with serial killers, but he didn't know the extent of that obsession. A friend of Sarah's even went up to the stand and said, quote, "It's unimaginable to me. That's not the Sarah I know. I only know her as a caring friend who puts others before herself." Another friend went up and said, quote, "We often talked about true crime and she often posted pictures of Richard Ramirez. Even still, I wasn't concerned. She once asked me for my opinion on Jack the Ripper and said that she actually thinks she was a woman and therefore never got caught." And a best friend of Sarah's by the name of Tim actually went up to testify and said, quote, "I wrote her a letter and asked her if the news of her crime really was true, and she said yes. When I first heard about it, my initial thought was maybe it was self-defense or maybe the man tried to force himself onto her." The judge then said that Sarah was heartless and cruel and a danger to society, and if she was never caught, she would have went undetected and definitely would have murdered so many more innocent people. And it is true that she would have murdered more people because she literally had dates lined up. Like, this crime happened on May 1st. She had a date on May 3rd and May 5th. That's 2 more victims in the same week. But when Sarah was asked why Zayed, out of all the guys that you talked to, why did you pick Zayed? Sarah said that she chose Zayed because he was the only man that she had talked to with a car and no kids, because that was sort of a rule for herself. She said that if the person had kids, it was an automatic no-go. And even on the stand, in front of Zayed's entire family, she bluntly said that she has no remorse for what she did, and she mostly did it because she wanted to know what it felt like to kill someone. She said that she wanted to know what that thrill was like, and so even though she's being locked up, she doesn't really care because at least she got to experience it. And that is when the judge had sentenced her to 12 years in a psychiatric facility. And when she was walking out of her sentencing, she opened up her palm, and on her palm was a pentagram, the same exact pentagram that was drawn on Richard Ramirez's hand at his trial. What happened to Francisca, that friend that knew about the murder before it happened? Well, Francisca was actually going to get 5 years in prison and had a list of charges, but all of those charges were later dropped and nothing happened to her. And so as of today, Sarah is now 21 years old. She currently eats on a vegetarian diet, does daily workouts, and watches TV every day. So basically like a motel. She is set to be released in 11 years at the age of 31, which is still so insanely young. And I hope by that time she is treated enough not to be a danger to society anymore, not a danger to herself. I hope that she gets the help that she needs. I hope that she's able to live her life again and be a functioning human in society, but unfortunately we just won't know what will happen until that day gets here. But yeah, that is the end of today's video. If you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. If you want to follow me on any of my socials, like my Instagram, that will be linked down below, as well as my PO box if you want to send me anything, and as well all of my research for this video will be linked down below. So if you're curious about like the quotes or the trials or the articles, all of that will be linked down below. And yeah, that's all from me. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Make sure to go outside today, get some fresh air, look at the sky, look at the sun, even if it's raining, enjoy the nice soothing pitter patter of the rain. Make sure to drink some water, have a wonderful day today. And as always, I love you, I love you, I love you, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.